Let's talk about something that no one wants to admit. But you feel it. You've felt it more times than you're willing to confess. That exact moment when you wake up for no reason in the middle of the night and, for a few seconds, you don't understand why you're still breathing. It's not sadness. It's not tiredness. It's something deeper, older. It's a crack in the soul. Something broke a long time ago, and even though you try to ignore it, it's still there, invisible to others. But you know it. It's inside, like a wound that never fully closed. And the curious thing is, no one notices. You can keep smiling, doing what's expected of you, playing every role. But there's a part of you that no longer believes in anything. That sits in silence at the back of your mind and watches. Watches how you fake it, watches how you survive, and wonders how much longer you'll hold on. Now look at yourself. You're here, searching for answers in a video, hoping someone says what you don't dare even think. Do you want me to tell you the truth? What consumes you inside doesn't have a simple name. It's not depression, nor stress, nor a bad streak. It's emptiness, pure and deep. A black hole in the center of your existence. And do you know what the most messed up thing is? You don't know where it comes from. You just know that it's there. Always. And that's why you cover it up. With distractions. With habits you can't let go of. With addictions that don't seem so serious until you realize you no longer control anything. But what if I told you that that addiction you're ashamed of isn't a mistake? What if that behavior you've been trying to hide for years isn't a curse, but a clue? What if that uncontrollable impulse that drags you toward the same thing over and over again is actually a message? One that doesn't come from the outside, but from deep inside you. Carl Jung didn't see addiction as a failure. He didn't condemn it as a simple, bad habit. To him, it was a call, a search disguised as self-destruction, a desperate manifestation of a soul that has gotten lost along the way, and, lacking answers, it tries to manufacture comfort, even if it's temporary, even if it's false. Most will tell you that you're weak, that you need willpower, that the problem is you. But what if the problem is that you're trying to heal a soul pain with solutions that don't touch the soul? What if you're trying to fill an existential gap with substances, routines, people, or screens that only worsen the silence when everything shuts off? Addiction isn't an external enemy. It's an echo. It's a signal. It's the way your unconscious screams, something is missing. And if you don't listen to that scream, the cycle repeats, stronger, darker, more unbearable. The question is, are you brave enough to listen? Because what we're going to explore today is not comfortable. It's not superficial. It's not for those who want easy solutions. We're going to enter the core of the psyche. We're going to open doors you've kept closed for years. We're going to talk about the true meaning of emptiness, about that pain you can't name, about that absence no one fills. And yes, we're going to talk about addiction, but not the way others do. Not from guilt, not from judgment. We're going to talk from the symbol, from the invisible, from what Jung called the hunger for the sacred. Prepare yourself, because nothing you thought about yourself will remain untouched after this. This is not a video to entertain you. It's a mirror. And like every honest mirror, it doesn't forgive. But it can also show you something you've been avoiding for too long, the truth. And the truth, even though it hurts, sets you free. So breathe and listen. This is not about defeating addiction. It's about understanding it. Because only what is understood can be transformed. You've come this far? That already says something. It says that there's a part of you that intuits that the answer isn't in stopping consumption, but in discovering why you need it. But let's go further. Much further. Because there's something almost no one talks about when addiction is discussed. The loss of the symbolic, the collapse of meaning, the break between humans and what gave meaning to their existence. And do you know what happens when the symbolic disappears? The literal invades everything. The immediate, the chemical. What works now, even if it destroys you later? We live in an era where the sacred has been replaced by the useful, where we no longer look inward, but toward the storefronts, where we no longer seek a transcendent experience, but fleeting validation. And that's the real trap. Jung knew this. He sensed it with a clarity that today seems almost prophetic. The human soul needs ritual, needs symbol, needs a real connection with the invisible. When that is lost, the human doesn't find peace. It despairs. And in that despair, it seeks substitutes, substances, stimuli, escapes, compulsive behaviors that crudely imitate what was once only found in the spiritual. Because what you call addiction might, deep down, be a distorted ritual, a repeated ceremony without knowing why, an unconscious attempt to return to a state of communion with something greater than you. But the problem is the channel is broken. The sacred has diluted, and in its place, only the reflection remains. The artificial, the empty. Do you want an uncomfortable truth? Many of those who are labeled as addicts today are nothing but spiritual seekers whom no one taught how to seek. People with extraordinary sensitivity, condemned to live in a world that no longer offers depth. Beings who feel more intensely, but having found no guide to the symbolic, end up trapped in the chemistry of escape. And then judgment falls on them. They're called weak, sick, incapable, but no one asks why their wounds hurt more, why their hunger is so fierce, why, even after consumption, they don't find lasting relief. Jung said that what is not made conscious manifests in life as destiny. Do you know what that means? That if you don't make your wound conscious, your pain will drag you again and again to the same abyss until you decide to look inside. Because the soul doesn't give up. The soul insists. And if you don't listen to it in dreams, it will scream at you in symptoms. If you don't attend to it in silence, it will speak to you through chaos. And if you keep ignoring it, it will push you into a life you don't recognize as your own, but from which you can't escape. Addiction is not the enemy. The enemy is disconnection. Disconnection from the symbolic, from the spiritual, from the deep. Disconnection from yourself. That's why, as long as you keep trying to heal the visible without attending to the invisible, you'll only be masking the symptom, covering up the hole. And the hole doesn't disappear by covering it. It just gets deeper. So what do? How do you return to the symbolic in a world where everything is immediate? This is where the journey gets truly serious, because it's not about finding answers outside, it's about rebuilding the bridge. That broken bridge between you and your own soul. It's about listening to what you've been ignoring, about accepting that you're not just a body with impulses, but a consciousness with a story, with an origin, with a shadow that doesn't want to destroy you, but to integrate itself. And do you know what's in that shadow? Everything you've rejected in yourself, everything you've repressed, everything your environment forced you to hide, the emotions you weren't allowed to express, the desires you were taught to deny, the fears that never left because no one taught you how to face them. All of that is still there, waiting. And as long as you deny it, it will keep finding ways to manifest itself. In your anxiety, in your dependence, in your impulses, in that constant need to fill something you don't know what it is, but that hurts as if you've known it forever. What Jung proposed wasn't easy, but it was real. He spoke of such a deep inner transformation that it can't be faked. A symbolic death of the false self, so that a more authentic self can be born. A self that doesn't flee from its pain, but uses it as a compass. A self that dares to look inside and say, "This too is me. This wound too belongs to me." Because only when you stop fighting with your shadow can you start walking with it. And at that moment, addiction loses strength. Because you no longer need to escape. You no longer need to numb yourself. You've found something stronger than temporary relief. Meaning. But that meaning can't be bought. It's not found in tutorials or motivational quotes. It's discovered, it's cultivated, it's suffered, and it's honored. It's the result of a descent. A dark night of the soul in which you realize that nothing external will save you. And maybe that's the best thing that could have happened to you. Because only when everything falls apart can you start building something real. So ask yourself this question now, while you listen to me. Are you willing to go down? To look into the abyss without trembling? Because what you're going to find down there isn't the end, it's the beginning. The beginning of a transformation with no turning back. It's not about quitting a substance. It's about stopping running from yourself. And for that, you first have to dare to meet yourself. Will you? Or will you keep running toward the same thing, hoping that this time it will save you? Many believe that addiction is a battle against a substance, against a bottle, a pill, a device, a habit. But the true battle is against forgetfulness, against the forgetting of oneself, against the spiritual amnesia in which we have been immersed since the day we were taught to distrust our inner world. Jung didn't just talk about healing behaviors, he talked about remembering. Remembering who you were before the noise, before the mask, before the wounds that started to define you. Because addiction doesn't come from nowhere. It's the consequence of a soul that was forced to silence its truth for too long. And there's something profoundly tragic and revealing in this. Many times, addiction is the only thing that keeps the connection with that original pain alive. It's, as twisted as it seems, a crooked bridge back to what you lost. That's why leaving addiction without doing the internal work can feel like betraying yourself, like turning off the only voice that still remembered that something inside is wrong. The solution isn't to break that link by force, but to understand it, to look at it without judgment. Because when you understand what addiction has been trying to tell you all this time, you stop fighting against it and start dialoguing with the wound. And here comes another element that no one wants to touch. Childhood. Not from the obvious perspective, not from the cliché narrative of something bad happened to you, but from the symbolic, from what was missing, from what you couldn't integrate. Jung insisted that many wounds of addiction are born when the inner child is forced to abandon its truth to survive, to adapt, to fit in. And that child doesn't die, it hides, it transforms into a shadow, into hunger, into that uncontrollable desire that reappears as anxiety, compulsion, irrational need. You're not crazy, you're fragmented. Parts of you got stuck in the early stages of your life, and now, decades later, they're screaming to be recognized. The problem is that no one taught us to care for our psyche. We were taught to polish the surface, to collect achievements, to be functional. But what good is being functional when your soul is falling apart? Jung said that the opposite of wholeness is not failure, it's adaptation without consciousness. Being someone who works within the system but inside is dying from symbolic hunger. That's addiction, an unconscious rebellion against life without a soul, against emptiness decorated with fake smiles. And this is where another brutally powerful concept Jung introduced comes in: the archetype of the wounded healer. Do you know it? It's the idea that only those who have been deeply wounded can become true healers. And not necessarily of others, but of themselves. Do you understand now? That addiction you carry isn't the end of your story, it's the entrance. The beginning of the descent into the psychological underworld where, if you dare to walk, you can find the key to turn your wound into power, into transformation, into meaning. But this journey isn't walked with brute force, nor with denial. It's walked with humility, with a radical willingness to look at yourself like never before, and above all, with a massive capacity to embrace pain without immediately seeking an escape. Because it's right there, in that moment of uncomfortable stillness, that the truth begins to reveal itself. Where the mask falls, where the symbolic reappears. Because maybe you don't need another strategy to stop consuming. Maybe what you need is a ritual, an act of reconnection with who you were before fragmentation, a new language to speak with your lost parts, a way to surrender, not to the substance, but to the need to pretend you're fine when you're not. Current culture promotes escape. It tells us, if it hurts, distract yourself. If you're empty, buy something. If you're bored, go on a social network. If you're alone, find company even if it's empty. But Jung would go in the opposite direction. He would say, if it hurts, enter the pain. If you're empty, sit in the emptiness and listen. If you're alone, make it a ritual, because there, in that uncomfortable territory, is the door to yourself. And there's another even more unsettling aspect that very few consider. The ego, not the superficial ego that everyone points to, but the ego as a barrier against the unconscious. The ego that fears losing control. The one that clings to addiction because it fears what's on the other side of abstinence. Because the unknown, though promising, is scary. Because being clean doesn't mean being free, it means being naked, exposed. And the ego hates that. That's why many relapse, not from desire, but from fear. Fear of discovering themselves. And what about the body? The body isn't just a vehicle suffering the consequences of consumption. The body is a living archive, a container of unspoken memories. Every tremor, every anxiety, every irrational impulse has a bodily echo. Jung didn't address it directly, but his idea of the extended psyche suggests that there's no real separation between mind and body, that your addiction also lives in your back, in your stomach, in your breath. And healing the mind involves inhabiting the body as a temple, not as an enemy, as a sacred place, not a battlefield. Do you realize the magnitude of this? We're not talking about quitting a bad habit. We're talking about an internal revolution, about rebuilding the bridge between your conscious world and your unconscious, about allowing yourself to descend into the depths of your being and return, not clean, but whole. And that's much braver than any superficial willpower. So now you know. What you've called addiction all this time might not be your curse, but your map. An encrypted map, drawn with pain, yes, but also with intention. A path to yourself. And the big question, the one that changes everything, is, will you continue to deny that signal? Or will you start to follow it? No one listens to the soul, the shadow, the deep pain, without secretly facing their own abyss, and that, even though it doesn't seem like it, is a sign. Because maybe right now something inside you is waking up. Something that doesn't understand words, but recognizes the truth when it hears it. And that truth isn't always bright. Sometimes, like now, it's brutal, uncomfortable, undeniable. But it's yours. And for the first time in a long time, maybe you're looking at it straight on. Now we're going to close this journey. But not with answers. not with packaged solutions to reassure you. We're going to close it with the one thing that can truly change something. A revelation. And it's this. Addiction isn't your enemy. It's your language. A primitive language with which your psyche has been speaking to you for years. Not to destroy you, but to make you listen. Not to punish you, but to make you wake up. Every relapse, every impulse, every moment when you felt you hit rock bottom was your unconscious screaming that you weren't on the right path, that you were living from the surface, from appearances, from what others expected, but not from your deepest truth. Because no one becomes addicted to something external if they're already whole inside. And here's the final twist. You're not broken. You never were. What's happening is that you're divided, separated from essential parts of you that you forgot, rejected, or were never allowed to integrate. But they're still there, waiting for you to call them by their name, to return their place, to tell them, "I'm not afraid to look at you." That's the first step. Not the only one, but the one that changes everything. And if you dare to take it, then addiction starts to transform. It doesn't disappear overnight, but it softens. It loses strength, because it no longer needs to scream. It no longer has to drag you. Because finally, after all this time, someone, you, is listening. So here we end, but not how you expected. Not with empty promises, not with self-help solutions. We end with a brutal invitation. Stop running, stop numbing, stop looking for answers outside, and begin, even if little by little, to rebuild that bridge to what Jung called the self, that indestructible core in the center of your soul. It's there, despite everything, despite you. And if this stirred something inside you, if something clicked in your mind or in your chest, then I ask you only one thing. Comment below the phrase, "It's not the substance, it's the soul." Don't do it for me, do it for you. Because writing it down is a symbolic act. It's the first stone of something new. And if you want to keep exploring these kinds of ideas, if you feel you need more of this and less of the usual noise, subscribe to the channel. Not to accumulate another number, but to build, together, a space where the invisible has a voice, where pain is understood, not hidden, where the search for the soul is sacred again. And now, goodbye. But not with a farewell. But with a whisper you'll only understand if you've really been there. The hell isn't the punishment. The hell is the distance between you and what you could have been. See you in the next descent, or in the next awakening, wherever it may be, just not on the surface.